Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Fiona from the History of Art Society, and George is also here with us from the committee. Today, I'll be telling you about advice for the exam, specifically the virtual exams that are happening this year. But the skills that you use are very similar to exams that have been taken previously and the essays you've submitted. I'll go through the format and structure of the exam a bit, and then we'll open it up to questions and we can kind of discuss. I also included some paintings some images that have been in your courses, so this might help for revision as well. Hopefully you don't look like Murat when you're writing your essay. So um, this is what a previous exam looked like. Um, so they all start with a picture question where there'll be a image of an artwork that was been on the course and you analyze them, and then there's an essay question that you answer, basically a short essay but similar to the essays you've submitted already. These two parts, the images and the essay, are equal points, so you should spend equal time on them. In-person exams are normally 2 hours, so that's a kind of approximate time that they're expecting you to focus on this exam for. And also, please read the directions when the exam comes out, like the actual directions on the piece of paper or digital doc PDF. So I'll start with the image question. This question is really asking you to do visual analysis. Um, there'll be two images on the exam. The artist, title, date, and other details will be given, and then your job is to discuss and analyze the images. What they're looking for here is really overarching themes and your critical thinking. This is not a memory test. You're not meant to be just listing facts. This is to show your thinking skills and your writing skills. Also, these images you will have seen in lectures, and they will relate to kind of general themes and periods on the course. For this section, there'll be two images, and you're expected to write about 1,000 words for this, so about 500 words for each image. And here's some tips from the History of Art Writing Guide, which if you should be able to find on your Learn. If you can't, you can DM the History of Art Society and we'll send you a copy of it as well. So if you don't know the image, obviously on this exam, you'll be able to look it up. But first start by comparing it to something you do know. When you see a painting or a sculpture, you'll probably think, oh, that looks like that other painting that I do know. What visual analysis is really just basing your analysis on what you can see. So really, it's not a test of memory. It's a test of how you think, how you analyze. That's what they're looking for. And also they want you to discuss the scholarship around this artwork. So after you kind of describe it and look at it, what are the general discussions connected to this period and this artwork, and how is that interesting? Why was this made? And also there'll be two images on the test. You're going to discuss them independently, so don't compare them. Remember to read the directions carefully and answer the questions. Here's a little example. If you want to see kind of an in-depth visual analysis, Jill Burke, one of our professors, made a video on YouTube. If you just search, I'll post this PDF afterwards, but if you just search Jill Burke, History of Art Visual Analysis, it should come up. She does a very detailed, long version, but it's the same basic things. What you want to do is
highly recommend watching
Mhm.
that video. If you are not confident in visual analysis, watching that video will definitely help.
But yeah, so basically, what I recommend is start by literally describing the work. What do you see? What is it of? Because we can sometimes get kind of the cart before the horse by saying, oh, it symbolizes blah de blah. But what is the painting of? Like, why is it a lady on a swing throwing her shoe off? Why is there a classical sculpture in a garden? What is actually in it? Art history is a lot about looking closely and about showing an attention to detail. So that's what visual analysis is really about, is basing your analysis on what actually is there, the evidence in the image. And then once you have the description of it, why was it made this way? You should know or be able to find the original context, who made this work, who commissioned or owned this work, why was it made, what was its purpose, what was its original context, was it originally in a church, or was it originally in a specific place. Pre-modern times, most artwork was not made to be artwork in galleries. It had function and purpose. So you can think about that. Then why is there a painting of this specific thing? And then you can think about formal qualities. What's the style of it? What material is it made of? So these questions, when you had to memorize the dates and stuff, or like the title and a vague date in previous exams, it was called identify, date, and discuss. That's what it said on the exam. This is a fancy way of saying what, when, why. So I think this is how I like to think about this: is the art history is all about the why. Why was this made? So continue that. But yeah. And next is the essay question. So read the question carefully. I cannot state this enough. Read everything very carefully. And when you see, there'll be 5 essay questions and you pick one to answer. So these will be like from different subjects in the course and you pick one. And I'd say pick the one that you're most interested in. If you really liked those lectures, if you feel comfortable about talking about that, pick that question. Don't pick the one that you think will make you sound smart or is hard to answer. Pick something you're interested in writing about, because you're going to spend time writing about this. Like a normal essay, you have an intro, body, and conclusion. It's just a bit shorter. This should be approximately 1,000 words. You want to use specific artworks as examples in these questions. I'll show you some example questions later, but as it's art history, we're always talking about artworks. Don't just talk in this kind of abstract generalizations. Specifically talk about details in artworks to back up your argument. Generally, I'd say for 1,000 words, talk about 1 to 2 artworks, unless the question specifies otherwise. And as with visual analysis, use the same skills used in your essay to describe the work and then analyze it. And also, I think it's useful to think, why did you choose this artwork to answer this question? Because that'll help you find your argument. And here again, they're not looking for just a list of facts recited from the lecture. They're looking for critical thinking and analysis. Yeah. And also, you don't need to footnote or bibliography on this essay. Just kind of imagine they're like a normal in-person exam. Even though this is open book, you're not required to footnote, but you should, if you can, reference scholarly opinion. So if there's a specific article that talks about this work and they have an opinion on it, you can mention that author. And especially if there's kind of varying opinions on one topic, you can kind of have 2 scholars argue with each other in your discussion. And here are some more tips from the History of Art Writing Guide. So make sure you engage directly with the question. So basically answer the question. I was actually at something with Carol Richardson and Michelle Foote last night. And I told them, oh, I'm giving an event about exams. What do you want to remind the students of? The main thing is answer the question. Because apparently every year there's a few people who don't answer the question. You might write a great essay, but if it doesn't answer the question, then you have not done it correctly. So if nothing else, answer the question. And take time, write clearly, have preparation. And also, I like this last sentence. The skills that you use to write essays and write exams, these are transferable skills that develop you as a person and as a writer, that you can use after university. So I try to think of George.
Sorry, Fiona, I think I'm sort of interrupting your point then, but when we're saying about answering the question, it sounds like an obvious point to make, but write a small plan beforehand and stick to it, because it'll force you, to do all the stuff of linking back at the end of every paragraph, that kind of thing. Planning really helps. It's not like a crutch admitting that you can't think. Planning is your best friend when writing essays and exams.
Totally. And so how do we revise for this? I'd say studying in general, everyone's brain processes information differently, so you have to find what works for you. If you've taken thorough notes throughout the semester and you've been doing readings, you're probably in a good place already. Also, if you go online, if you just search past papers, Edinburgh University, you can find past papers, and they're basically just previous exams. And I have some of them here. I really recommend that you practice them with your friends and study with your friends. So they'll look like this. Previously, the history of art exam was a whole year long. So disregard this part C because those will be for next semester. So just these questions on the top. And you can see what the questions are like. Sometimes they're quite specific. I think about see, this question is just about the Ghent altarpiece, or sometimes they're more broad, but it says reference to at least 3 visual examples. So that kind of gives you an idea of how to answer these questions. Here are some more practice questions. You can find these online and it'll tell you what year they're from. Sometimes the course does change over time. So if you go back a lot of years, it might be quite different. The content, if you can understand a bit better. Here's some from History of Art 2. So say this question, how does Whistler's aestheticism differ from Victorian narrative painting? For that question, I'd say pick a Whistler painting that's aesthetic and pick a Victorian narrative painting and compare and contrast them. And so definitely when you're working, definitely organize your notes in a clear way. I recommend chronologically since that's kind of how the courses are taught. I also recommend that you guide your notes through images. So have the images and then have notes about them because all art history is about images and the visual and analyzing that. But also people think differently. So maybe a timeline works for you, maybe a mind map works for you, maybe just a normal Google Doc. Also, catch up on essential readings that you missed or forgot to do that week. Go over notes you've already taken, watch any lectures you've missed, work with your friends. I love discussing stuff with my friends, and especially since we're all at home all the time, I think that's the best. Ages ago, I heard someone say that the best way to learn something is to teach it to someone else. So that's actually one of my favorite ways to revise is hang it with a friend and try to answer each other's questions, explain things to each other. I think that really helps. Yeah, George?
I would add in terms of focusing your revision that whilst it's very important to have a general overview of everything you've learned in answering the image questions, so you should revise everything. It's also quite wise to prioritize stuff you really enjoy and are really interested in for the essay questions. So if you have 3 options, I'd say study in depth 7 or 8 subjects that you really enjoy. So for example, I don't really like 18th century portraiture, but I love Impressionism. So I would learn about 18th century portraiture in case it came up in the image question, but I'd really go in depth on Impressionism, try and get everything in my brain ready to go. What are the debates? Who can I quote? That kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Learn everything, but do what you enjoy the most.
Yeah, I think that's good as well, but kind of to understand that you can't have very deep knowledge about everything. That's very difficult to keep in your mind. You should definitely have a understanding of everything, but definitely do more reading about stuff that you're passionate about, because I assume you chose art history because you like it. So have fun. I know that sounds weird to say for an exam, but if you can, write about things you enjoy or find what's interesting to you about them. Of course, still while answering the question. So
it
actually,
makes how do you way less stressed?
Yeah. So also, how do you write the exam? So normally, if this was physical in person, it'd be 2 hours in a big gymnasium where we all sit at desks in silence. I recommend you try to simulate exam conditions to kind of get you started. So I'd say set aside 2 hours. either at home, tell your flatmates to leave you alone, turn your phone off, throw it across the room, or go to the library where you have like good connection and silence and you can really focus. And in those 2 hours, try to answer all the questions and fill the word count. And then go take a break, eat something, take a nap, whatever you need to do, and come back with fresh eyes to proofread, add more, restructure. But I'd say definitely try to get it done in those 2 hours, like you would in a real exam, and then take a break and come back to it. You might find something that works differently. Maybe you do like 1 hour for each question and split it up that way. But I'd say definitely try to simulate kind of the lack of distraction and silence that you would normally get in an exam hall to really focus. I know in high school, I had a lot of exams and like in class essays that were like that. So my brain really knew how to like focus in that setting. And when I'm at home with all the stuff on my desk and my food and phone and everything, I get really distracted. So find what works for you and how you can actually focus and get done in a sensible amount of time. The department, the staff does not expect you to spend 24 hours on this exam. Please don't. Please sleep. Um, I also recommend pretend it's a normal exam. Get a good night of sleep the day before. Don't just be cramming. The few hours you spend studying is not more valuable than a few more hours of sleep that will make you more clear-headed and like have better critical thinking, which is what they're actually testing. And like eat well, take care of yourself, take some vitamin D, whatever you need. Like definitely take care of yourself in this time.
I
Uh,
always have a banana, slow release energy.
yeah, eat some fruit and veg. Here's also just some stuff from I'm almost done with this stuff, and then we can have questions. Here's some more from the History of Art writing guide. So kind of stuff I've already said, but it's open book online. It's typed up, but you get 24 hours. This should all be covered from your courses. But yeah, so you can see more of this, also post this document online if you want to look at it again. And then proofread as well. Anything you do, even an in-person exam, I always read it really quickly. What I usually do in an actual in-person exam is you have 2 hours and so I always like break my time up and like have my watch and do everything. So the first 10 minutes, I read the questions, pick questions, make a plan. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to say these points for these questions, and then I'm going to say this. This is going to be my argument. Make a little plan before I even start writing. Then split the time in half. I'm going to spend half the time on, or about an hour on pictures, and about an hour on the essay. And then at the end, leave yourself like 5 or 10 minutes to read through everything and edit it. And I find that is like, especially if you know, okay, I have an hour and I have I have 1,000 words I need to write in an hour. I find if you set yourself those deadlines, you can make them and you can do it. And then of course you go back and proofread it. But if you just say, oh, I can do it later, oh, I can do it later, you're never going to do it. And it's just going to keep pushing. Like I find deadlines very useful. And also, so they've said that there's 2,000 word limit, but there's a plus minus of 250 words margin. Also recommend, especially if you're by yourself, read the exam out loud, like before you submit, because then you can hear if sentences make sense and flow, and if you've like forgotten a word and things like that. So I'd say your last read through, read it out loud. I always find that quite helpful to make sure there's like clarity and understanding. Yeah, now we can have questions. Or George, do you have any last notes?
No, that was perfect.
Okay, cool.
If you've got questions, just stick them in the chat to stop everyone talking over each other.
Yeah, or I think you can raise your hand as well if you want to. Okay. And also, if you have any big questions about the exam, Jill Burke is the exam coordinator. And if you have other issues, contact your course organizer or your personal tutor if you need special circumstances or anything like that. And also the Institute for Academic Development, that's a university-wide thing that can help you as well with studying. But yeah, you can do this. You have these skills. You've already gotten into university, submitted a few essays. So you can do this. But does anyone have any more questions? Okay, I'm gonna stop screen sharing.
Please feel free, because we've already been through online examinations last year. So if there's anything you're confused about, please let us know. That's what we're here for.
Mm-hmm. If you feel like you have a silly question, it's okay. I know I ran through that really fast, so feel free to jump in. Or if not, we can end a bit early, and then you can always DM the History of Art accounts on Facebook or Instagram. Ooh,
Yes,
Prue, you have something? You can unmute yourself if you can.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Sorry. You said at one point, like when I think analyzing the artworks in section 1, you talked about like mentioning the scholarship around the artwork. If that isn't something that we've covered in class, are we expected to like gather some information beforehand in our study notes, or?
I would say this will usually be in your essential or recommended reading, Prune. They're sort of expecting you to quote the scholars you've already submitted. It doesn't have to be directly tied to that artwork specifically. It can be about, say we used the example of the aesthetic movement, it can be a broad essay on the politics of doing an aesthetic painting at that time period. It doesn't have to be specifically regarding that artwork. It also you don't have to show off and like quote you can if you like, but it's probably a wiser move to say what you've learnt in class and respond to it and take your own spin on it.
And also when we say quote, it's less like actually quote, it's more paraphrase and show that like this idea is from somewhere. So similar in like essays, when you're talking about a general idea about a period, a scholar wrote about that idea. It's probably in your essential reading. So you can say this, especially now that it's open book, it's much easier to do that. Especially in honors years like third and fourth year, it's very expected that you will reference scholarship. That just means like writing, fancy word for just like writing about the art. So you can say that like basically where your ideas are from. And not all artworks have a debate around them. Some there is like kind of a clear accepted sense of that. Does that make sense? Sorry, is that helpful, Prune? Susan asks, can the essay topics be examined? So the people who wrote the essay questions, the people who wrote the exam questions are the same people. So they know that you're the same students taking both things. So if you wrote an essay about one thing, they're not going to put the same question on the exam because that would be kind of redundant and a bit silly, but it might be the same period, but a different question about that period. So you might understand the topic already.
You also can't self-plagiarize. So if you've already written an essay on Impressionism, I think you can still write an exam question on Impressionism, but you can't repeat your argument that you've already made.
And also, you probably won't be able to repeat your argument because the questions will be slightly different. And also, the exam questions are usually less broad because you have less time to write than the essays.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I hope this helps. But yeah, generally I'd really recommend like revising with your friends, or just like say there's someone into your tutorial who sounds interesting, just like text them and be like, hey, do you want to be friends? I know it's quite weird virtual, but believe me, everyone needs help. Even the people who sound the smartest in class, they want support. Obviously, don't talk to your friends during the actual exam about it. But another thing I'm thinking of doing is like kind of making yourself, what's the word? Like doing it with someone simultaneously, where say you text your friend, okay, we're both going to start at 2:00 and at 4:00 we'll like get coffee or hang out and talk about like something else. just to kind of like have that, like kind of go to a workout class instead of working out by yourself. Kind of, I think if you need that, definitely reach out to people and ask for that.
We all need a bit of support right now.
Anyone else have questions? Don't be worried if you think they're silly or you just want me to repeat something that you missed earlier. George, any last remarks? Oh, Madeline, you can unmute yourself if you like.
Hi, sorry, I didn't mean for a question to be in bold. That was not intentional. Sorry about that. Yeah, I was just wondering, whenever you mentioned the first question about the about like overarching themes for the images. So overarching themes for all 3 images, or because obviously you're supposed to look at them separately, but are you talking about like combining them together?
No,
and looking
so that, yeah, so that you write that you respond to each image individually.
Okay.
But I mean, like through the course, there's like overarching themes of like religion and power and politics and like themes that run through the course, and like these images will connect to those bigger themes. But yeah, it specifically says you're not comparing the images to each other, you're like answering them independently. Maybe 2 of the images happen to connect to similar things, but you're answering independently. Does that help? Okay, I hope that makes sense. It is a bit weird.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for coming, by the way.
Unless anyone has anything else, I think we can wrap up there. Like we say, feel free to message us. It's what we're here for. That's our job as a society, is to provide support. And good luck, everyone. It's been a tough year, but you can do it. Definitely, you've already got the skills.
Yeah, and I just put the PowerPoint in the chat if you want to look at it. And if your friends ask about this, I'm going to post this recording on YouTube tonight, so other people will be able to see it. But yeah, good luck on your exams. You can do it. Don't worry, you've already submitted an essay. This is like one of those again, but with more structure. So you can do it.
Also, try your hardest, do your best, but first and second year don't count. So don't stress out too much about it. Stress out about it
you have to pass
and do the work, but it's fine. It's a learning process. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And if you can, enjoy yourself. But yeah, so definitely take care of yourself. Have fun. Good luck. Okay. Happy Friday night, everyone.
Have fun. Bye.
Bye.